Hello, world. Welcome to the 221st, believe it or not, climate change emergency protest here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It is Wednesday, February 22nd. I'm doing this early because I have a lot to do this week. And hopefully the wind won't get in the microphone all that much. If it gets too close, it doesn't sound so good. So, it's number 221. Next week is the 222nd climate change emergency protest. That'll be around March 3rd, maybe earlier. That's the following Friday. Presently, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is 220 parts per million to as much as 225.75 parts per million. It's all over the place as of the last 3 days at Mauna Loa volcano, the site where they do the readings of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And miraculously, when it started getting up to 225 and somewhere around there, 223, Mauna Loa went offline, as it often does when things aren't reading the way they want it to go. I'm not saying the fix is in, but a lot of times things get off. Thing goes offline periodically when it's not going the way they think it should, as far as I can tell. It is a government-run operation, and you don't want to clue in the public that we're in a massive existential crisis, as Joe Biden said. So last Sunday, Tanya and I my wife went down to Washington, D.C. for Rage Against the War Machine protest. And yeah, you might draw your own conclusions about that, but there needs to be some thought as to what's happening in the world right now concerning the fight in Ukraine going on between Russia and Ukraine, but it's a proxy war with the NATO nations and the United States involved as well, shipping massive amounts of war supplies to Ukraine. So we went down there. The U.S. budget right now, the budget we have, that's extra money that goes towards whatever programs we have. 875 billion of it is going towards the military industry, and I've talked about this several times. So, it's if you factor in the Veterans Administration, it's pushing somewhere around 72% of our budget, our discretionary funds, as they're called, goes towards the war machine, and that's 72%. Joe Biden said he's going to increase the amount they asked for with the next budget, and it's going to be even higher. So we're pushing 75%, 80% of our discretionary funds. There aren't going to be any funds to do anything else but war. Okay? An uninformed public has no idea what's going on. You're being played by the three big networks as well as Fox Television. And this is total insanity what's happening. I'm laughing because it's absolutely out of control. And until you, the public in the United States, gets a hold of yourself and starts doing your own research rather than listening to the big networks, it's nothing but government speak anymore. You're not going to understand what happened and what the past was with Ukraine and other issues around the whole world, including climate change. And those are big issues. And it's one of the top three issues of the doomsday clock that I'll talk about in a second, that we have 90 seconds to midnight till doomsday, meaning the end of the world for humans and most life on Earth. 90 seconds to doomsday. This is the closest it's ever been. In all the Cold War, anything, anytime, this is the closest it's ever been. So I'm standing on the battlefield right now. As you can tell, we got McPherson's barn behind me. This is called McPherson's Ridge. John Burns' statue's over there. Reynolds is down there. Peace Light's up there. I've done it from various locations. It's a really beautiful place. So we went down there for the protest. Climate change is the main issue for me, concerning stop the war. But right now it's not the main issue, because there's the other leg of the three legs of the doomsday clock, which involves nuclear war possibilities. And we can't do climate change. We can't solve the climate change issue without Russia. So Russia has a crazy amount of oil, gas, and coal. They also had the permafrost. So the permafrost is starting to thaw, and it's venting off massive amounts of methane into the atmosphere, as well as peat bogs, which catch fire, which vents off carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And then there's the methane clathrates in the shallow Russian seas to the north. And they have an extreme amount of methane also trapped as a greenhouse gas in these cages, basically, of methane. And when they expand up to 150 times the size of what they are. So a little thimble can be as big as my head, full of methane. And then it has methane as a greenhouse gas. It's 162 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than as carbon dioxide. times. It's crazy for the first 2 years, and then year 2 through 20, carbon or methane is 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas. So it's an extreme greenhouse gas, and the permafrost has a ton of it, as well as carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide in it. So it's a dangerous game we're playing right now. We can't do this without Russia on board and helping us fight climate change. Russia also has a taiga, which is the boreal forest, which circles the whole Arctic area and the northern area, just subarctic. And as they catch fire or change, they're going to die off, and then we're into another extreme situation where burning wood also vents off carbon dioxide, obviously, because it's a flame, but it also vents off methane and nitrous oxide as well. Up there in the taiga forest, you have evergreens, which are spruce, fir, and pines, of course. But they also have deciduous larch, birch, and aspens. So there's a ton of trees up there. If you ever go to Maine in the United States, it's a similar situation. Beautiful area. A lot of trees per square foot. I mean, it's just crazy how many, trees are packed in Maine. And the same thing is in Russia as well. There's also swamps in Russia, which also vents off methane or carbon dioxide, depending which gas gets gets eaten up by microbes first, as well as thermokarst lakes. So if you have this permafrost and it melts, it forms these pools, and then the pools of water actually cause the permafrost to melt quicker because the water drains down or is darker than the surrounding snow, and it also heats up quicker, and it accelerates climate change, as well as venting off of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So we're dealing with methane, nitrous oxide, and carbon dioxide in Siberia and Russia in general, and northern Russia and the Russian seas. So the war right now, and the reason why we went, was you're risking an escalation. You're being fooled here in believing that, oh, it's just a war and it's all fun and games. We're just going to shoot each other, or let them shoot each other and fight it out. This has a real chance of escalation. And that involves not only Ukraine, but Europe is right there. Okay, all the NATO nations now have surrounded Russia, which explains their paranoia, and is a violation of the original agreement when the wall came down. Okay, it's a whole thing that goes way back. This isn't just Putin decided to go, hey, I'm going to attack Ukraine today. No, he got provoked. But I'm saying Putin also is a horrible war criminal, as are most leaders when they authorize to bomb other nations or destroy other nations or attack supposed troops. But there's always collateral damage, which is a war crime, and the events that's happening on the ground is not only Russians doing things. If you look into the war reports, the Ukrainians are doing horrible things to the Russian soldiers as well when they capture them. So there's a whole thing going on, and you're not being told the truth as to what's happening. Like yesterday's Putin's war conference that he had, they gave one angle of it and just one little snippet, but that was not his whole speech. And he explained what was happening as far as, and I don't believe all the things he says, okay, just like our leader, I don't believe everything he says, because it's all slanted their way. But what I'm saying is there's more to the story than what's being told. And if you don't look at other means of media that are reputable throughout the world, you're not getting a real report as to what's happening. And you're uninformed as to what's happening. And you believe things are one way when in reality, it's a little off of that or extremely off of that. And you're not being told the truth. You're being played as pawns. So we're risking a risk of war escalation, which then in climate change doesn't get dealt with. You risk a real risk of China getting involved. And this angle that China is going to be supplying Russia with war material, well, that's what we're doing with Ukraine. That's what NATO is doing with Ukraine. I don't see a difference. But anyways, regardless of that, China's real thrust, if you read other reports, is they're trying to broker a peace. Okay, they're trying to be the leaders of the world, which the United States used to be and no longer is. They're trying to broker a peace between Russia and the United States, and they're going to have to drag the European nations into this peace issue because the United States is in a total warmonger setting right now. And you Europeans had better watch yourselves, because if this Russian thing escalates at all, you're the first ones to go down. We're untouched. Russian tanks aren't going to roll in the United States. They will roll into Europe, and it's in your best interest to get this thing calmed down and get peace established in Europe, as well as Ukraine itself, obviously. So there's no suggestion by the United States for peace at all. And this is what was discussed down at the protest. And I've known this. There's no discussion. I say this, when I watch news all the time. They never talk about peace, never brokering into peace, never even mentioning peace. They want war because we have this $875 billion budget, and you have to justify why the budget is so out of control, because we have to fight. We have to fight all the time. We're always creating enemies. If we don't have an enemy, watch out, because you soon will be our enemy. China will eventually broker a peace, in my mind. Most likely, this is what's going to happen, okay? No one's suggesting this. We don't have a State Department that works. Blinken with the State Department is nothing but a propagandist that's all about war, and he refuses to negotiate with Russia. And in fact, Ukraine, supposedly a few months ago, had an idea for peace, and they refused to allow them to venture out on this peace issue. It's like, oh no, you're not going to do this, because that little Zelensky is our puppet. And that's just the way you got to look at it. Just like if Russia has someone on their side that's fighting, they're going to be his puppet. So you look at the whole history of Ukraine all the way back to 2014. It's really interesting to look at as to how things got to their way. And I won't talk about the Azov Brigade. So the Crimea, what's going to happen with this peace issues? Crimea is going to end up going to Russia. They've been there since 2014. Let them have it. The Donbass region is full of Russian nationals. The Donbass region does not want to be part of Ukraine anymore, as far as I understand. They don't want to be a part of Russia either. They should just be a free nation and let them handle their own borders and their own problems. And that's eastern Ukraine. And Ukraine itself should be left alone as part of the peace issue. And if the Russians ever venture into that, then we can have at it full force. NATO can move in there and all that stuff. That's my thought process. Crimea goes with Russia. Donbass region goes free. And Ukraine goes free. Okay, so and Ukraine's left alone for now on. And I wouldn't let them be part of the NATO nations, because that creates more issues again. But they have to be under the protection of NATO. That if anything happens there again, then you go at whoever invades. Or we could do the second thing, which is what our State Department seems to be egging on, in which there's no negotiated peace at all. And I say have at it. If you're going to do it, just do it. Have nuclear war till nothing's left. See who wins then. We win, hey, because we have more missiles launched their way and they have less missiles launched our way. No, you only need like 100 nuclear missiles. 100 nuclear whistles too. 100 nuclear missiles, and that'd be it. That'd create such a nuclear winter that humans would not survive. Life on Earth wouldn't survive. The radioactivity raining down for hundreds of years, or creating a desolate life on Earth, that would be it. And that would be victory for the United States. Yay, let's do it. So that's the choice. If you want to have nuclear war, just do it. Get it over already. Create the flash. This area is done for. We got Camp David like 20 miles away here. The little Pentagon's 10 miles away. You got the Army War College up here at Carlisle, which is another 20 miles away. We're cooked here. So just have at it. Get it over with and get it done. Okay, or negotiate peace. One way or the other, this is going to go badly. So get it done, get the peace issue underhand, and then we need to look at what's going on. So the Rage Against the War Machine, the Republican and Democrat Congress are both warmongers right now. The entire group of them. There's no negotiated peace. There's no mention of peace. They don't want peace as to what's going on. I'm going to turn the camera the other way and let you look at the seminary, because someone's coming this way and people don't agree with what I say always. So you got a situation where the Rage Against the War Machine, and when we were down there protesting, the Republican and Democrat Congress both are warmonger groups. Both parties are set in that mode, and they have no desire to negotiate a peace at all. There's no suggestion of peace. So I'm calling for no support of either party at this point. They don't deserve your support. They're off on a tangent, and people need to start protesting in front of their own party headquarters. When we were down at the rally, there were left-wingers there, there were right-wingers there. You could tell by how they're dressed and everything, and that's kind of stereotypical, but you could tell who was who. And there were people down the middle there. There were black people there, there were white people there, there were Asians there at the protest. There were men and women there. You know, so this is an issue where we need to work together to survive, and you need to get informed, just like climate change, as to what's happening. So right now, as I said, we're 90 seconds away from doomsday, according to the doomsday clock and the group of atomic scientists that gets together once a year. So there are three things: are this bioweapons, which includes germs, viruses from labs, and gain of function. Working on gain of function, meaning working with the virus and making it more and more intense, and you end up with what has happened recently. And I know they say it was a bat from a market. It was not. It was absolutely from a lab that escaped. Now, which lab? That's up to you to decide that. I'm pointing south here. But, you know, over in China, they got these labs in Wuhan right beside this market that was going on. They work with the bats. So I'm calling for, well, I'm not. This is an issue of survival with the doomsday clock. That was the bioweapons. The second issue that the doomsday clock people talk about, and they did talk about the labs and gain of function. So don't blame me. Go on site and see what they were talking about. The second thing they're talking about is nuclear war that I just went over about concerning Russia and China and us and everyone else. The third issue they're saying that is part of the doomsday clock is climate change. And we're not working on climate change at all. They're too wrapped up. The news is too wrapped up in this issue of war. The Biden administration is all about war. The Congress is all about war, Republicans and Democrats. Some in Congress now are making stupid statements as to what they want to do concerning nuclear weapons and rearming Ukraine even more so with jets and whatnot. This is going to go badly. It's a lot easier to negotiate a peace and get this over with and get back to fighting climate change as a whole world. This thing does not stop at borders. And when climate change is as it is now, we're having feedback loops happening, as in today, it is 46 degrees. Tomorrow it's going to be 75 degrees. This is an indication that the jet stream is shredded. And the reason why it's shredded is because you're having a feedback loop from the Arctic that it's severely weakened that there's less ice and everything up there. And the sun is not being reflected the way it was. And it's raining up there at times instead of snowing. It rained in the top of Greenland a few years ago, the highest hill there, instead of snow. We're having a breakdown of the whole system that's going on. This is a feedback loop that the less snow leads to more heat, the more methane gets away from the permafrost, which leads to less snow and more heat and things like that. So it's called a feedback loop. So the weather is all over the place. There is no definitive weather pattern now, what's happening here. You're having a melting Arctic, you're having a thawing permafrost, and feedback loops are getting out of control. So I talked about a few weeks ago, about General Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn back in 1876, July 4th, I think it was, 1876, our bicentennial back, or our centennial back then. And he was going to attack at Medicine Hat Coulee, I think it was, Little Bighorn. And he was warned by the scouts, the Indian scouts, not to go, not to provoke them, not to go at it, because there are 10,000 warriors there at this place at Little Bighorn. And what happened was that Custer didn't listen to the advice of his scouts and people that actually knew what was happening. So it was 276 against 10,000. Well, that didn't last too long. And that's what's happening now. People are warning of nuclear war and possibility, and also massive escalation before that. And they're not listening. People aren't listening about the viruses. Quit messing with the viruses. Quit making gain of function out of these viruses. Quit making them worse. But most importantly, people aren't listening and uninformed about climate change and the possibility of runaway heating. And what's going to happen is, at that point, you get a runaway heating, but you get hothouse Earth, and we're kicked out of the Goldilocks zone. The world right now, the Earth is in the Goldilocks zone as far as its location in the solar system. And Mars is on the cold end of the Goldilocks zone, and Earth is on the warm end of the Goldilocks zone. And we're pushing ourselves out of the Goldilocks zone into the hot area, the Goldilocks zone, towards the sun, as not actual location, but as far as temperature goes. And just a little change in temperature is enough to affect everything on the planet. We're in a nice calm era right now. But any little change, humans cannot handle that. Most life on Earth cannot handle that. It's just the rate of change that things are happening, and life on Earth cannot keep up fast enough to evolve to that point. It's going at 10,000, the background rate of extinctions, or 1,000, depending who you talk to. And things are changing at 1,000 times the rate or 10,000 the rate that it used to when events happened. Previous extinctions events took hundreds, if not millions of years, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years to occur. And right now we're doing this all in a few decades, basically. And we're not going to survive this if we keep on this path. And as long as this war keeps happening and people don't work on climate change, we're not going to survive this. You're going to lose one leg of the bar stool, which has three legs, which is the war in Ukraine, which could be nuclear war. The second leg is climate change. And the third leg is this virus issue that the scientists keep messing around with and the governments keep messing around with. We're in big trouble with all three of these legs of the bar stool. And I really highly suggest everyone, watch your news at night. Watch the three networks because they're all the same. So you watch one, you watch them all. What we do is we record them and then we listen to the headlines and then we realize it's not real news. And then we go over to other programs on YouTube, or I read on my iPhone different news articles. But we go over to YouTube to find the real news as to what's happening. And Haystacks is a good one where you can angle the news towards European news or African news or Asian news or various news organizations around the world as to their take on things as to what's happening. So I really suggest you get away from the three networks and also Fox Television and start studying, what's happening as far as the world events go. I realize this wasn't a fun talk and it's a little off base from climate change, but it's all related. Everything affects everything everywhere else all at once, So if a butterfly flies by in Brazil somehow, some way, that affects the wind patterns down there, and it can lead actually to a hurricane and do this all. It's called the butterfly effect. So one little thing can actually push off and cause other things to happen. And what's happening in the Ukraine with this war is not a little thing. What's happening in the Arctic is not a little thing. And what's happening around the world concerning climate change in the global south is not a little thing. So I'll catch you next week. Like I say, it's going to be a better talk, but most likely things are going to keep spinning out of control until you, the public, gets informed and actually does something about our administration and our Congress in the United States and start demanding a peace negotiation. There's no harm in peace, okay? You're not losing face and all that. Get over this self-centered attitude about the United States and the war in general and things like that. And he started this and he started that. Biden and Putin are extremely childish and they should not be in charge of anything. The Congress should not be in charge of anything. The Russians in charge, their government administration should not be in charge of anything. It's you, the people, that have the power. And as long as you keep sitting on your hands and doing nothing and saying nothing, this will get out of control. And the likelihood of us surviving any one of these three bar leg issues is extremely low. And once one thing goes, it'll affect everything else. And I really suggest you become more informed. Obviously not, because down at that war protest, there were only 2,000 people there for our very survival. So I'll catch you next week. And that'll be next Friday, hopefully. See you later.